When learning a foreign language, one of the most difficult things is understanding native speakers or content that is interesting, but made by native speakers and for native speakers, and therefore not prepared to be used as language learning materials. It's not adapted for language learners, beginners, intermediate level learners. So it's obviously difficult to understand in the beginning, and also understanding native speakers in real life, obviously. And this part where you go from a beginner level or even intermediate level learner to actually understanding native speakers easily is where a lot of people get frustrated and give up, because it feels like it's a never-ending process and you never really get all that good, and no matter what you do, you keep not understanding what you're listening to. It happens with speaking as well, and that's a topic for another video, right? But uh, here we'll focus on comprehension, how to improve comprehension using native speaker content, how to actually learn using native speaker content, how to do comprehensible input the right way. So instead of spending 3,000 hours watching dumbed down videos for beginners where people speak to you really slowly and using a very simple vocabulary for months or years, we're going to skip all of that and we're going to jump straight to native speaker content that's actually interesting to you. All right? Whatever you're interested in, it doesn't matter if it's sports, history, gossip, anything you like consuming content, any kind of topic that you like consuming content about, you'll be able to do it by doing this, following these simple steps, right? I'll show you a bunch of tricks you can use to create your own learning materials using interesting content, and also eventually, sooner rather than later, understand the native speaker content that you're interested in, so that you can continue improving, you can maintain your language and continue improving by listening to actually interesting stuff. And the first obstacle here is vocabulary. If you don't know enough words, of course, you will not be able to understand. So you need to learn more words. At this point, if you are trying to learn or trying to improve your current skills by using native speaker content, I assume you already know the most common 1,000, maybe 2,000 words at least. If you don't know those, this is too advanced for you. Go learn those first, right? Because that's Zipf's law. And if you take a text, any kind of text, it doesn't matter if it's an article, a page from a book, the transcript of a video or a podcast, from all the vocabulary that you'll encounter there, most of it, 80% of it, will be the most common words. And I'll show you later how this works. But basically, from all the words that you'll encounter there, a lot of them, 80% or more, will be words that show up all the time. Really common, all right? So you need to know those really well. Otherwise, it'll just be impossible to understand anything, right? You need to know those. Now, this webinar is for you to learn the remaining 20 or 10% that you need to also know to be able to understand. Because even if you know the most common words and you know 80% of the vocabulary they use in a specific piece of content, the remaining 20 or even 10 or even 5% is still a huge problem, because the most common words will be 80% of the total amount of words that show up, but not 80% of the unique words that show up. I don't know if that's clear. It's a little bit. It's not all that clear, right? Basically, you get in a 10,000 word text, 8,000 of those words will be words that repeat themselves all the time. And the remaining 2,000 words will be words that show up once or twice or maybe 3 times. Right? And the thing is, those 8,000 words have contain fewer unique words than the remaining 2,000 words, because there's lots of repetition in those 8,000 words, right? So with 500 or 1,000 words, you know most of those 8,000 words out of 10,000, but you need to know a lot of unique words, 1,000, 2,000, to know the remaining 10 or 20%, right? So yes, you need to know the basics, all the frequent vocabulary well. I recommend you do that with the lists that we've got, all the A1, A2 level vocabulary lists, learn them really well. But then you need to learn all the less frequent vocab that shows up in the content. And the problem with learning less frequent vocab is that it's less frequent, right? And if you are going to learn vocabulary by getting exposed to it, you will learn the frequent words relatively quickly because they show up all the time, right? But the much less frequent words that you also need for certain kinds of content, any kind of content really, you'll have to know less frequent words to understand because they show up all the time. Not each specific word doesn't show up all the time, but some infrequent words will show up all the time. It's just different infrequent words, so you never see them often enough to learn them in context, because you need to see a word in context 10 or 20 times to actually remember it well. And if the words are not frequent, unless you're getting truly insane amounts of input, and even then, if you don't remember them from last time you saw those words, then you'll have to look them up again and again. So it's really not practical. It's not a practical way to go from beginner, early intermediate to a level where you're at an advanced level of comprehension and you understand native speaker content easily. It's really not practical to do it just by listening more and reading more. You could do it eventually after 10,000 hours or however many hours it takes to get there. If you spend 10 hours a day reading and listening to the language, eventually you'll understand everything, especially if it's an easier language. And we'll talk about cognates later, languages from the same family and all of that. But if it's a language that's slightly more difficult because its vocabulary is a lot more different, like Russian or, I don't know, Arabic from English, it's going to be an insane amount of watch time, reading time, and constantly looking up words. It's going to take time anyway, but this way you'll be able to speed up the process. All right. So basically, what I'm going to show you here is, after this long intro, is how to watch content while understanding, interesting content while understanding, so that you can enjoy content while learning. That's important. Also, how to make this content much easier, much more comprehensible from the beginning, and how to extract the important vocabulary out of it, and how to learn the less frequent words that you encounter while enjoying that interesting content that's advanced, right? And if you do this with one long form video in the language, you'll learn a little bit. You'll learn quite a lot of vocab, actually. But if you do it daily with a video, 2 or 3 videos, well, 2 or 3 articles every day, a couple of them, 3 of them every day, in a matter of weeks, you'll be able to understand pretty much everything in that specific field. Of course, this is very field specific. If you like reading and watching content or listening to content about World War II, like I do, the vocabulary I learned there doesn't translate into then understanding books or podcasts about football, for example, which I'm not particularly interested in. So that's why you need to focus on reading and watching and listening to content in the specific fields that you want to be able to, like the specific type of content that you want to be able to understand. This is why following those courses with the comprehensible input, and you do I don't know how many hours of beginner videos, and then I don't know how many hours of intermediate level videos, and all, like you learn all the intermediate vocab and all the beginner vocab. Yeah, but maybe you don't need all that vocab at all. If your goal is to have conversations and your goal is to understand content on specific fields that you're interested in, you don't need vocabulary that's supposedly lower level, but it will never show up in those like forks. Like let's talk about, like, for example, cutlery or things like that. Like, you don't need to learn those if your goal is to talk to people in the street and to understand content about philosophy or politics or something like that. You need a different type of vocabulary. So it's not the best idea to look at vocabulary as something that you learn by level. So at this level, you should know all these words, and then the next level, should know all these words. No, because a lot of those words, after the first 1,000-ish, maybe 2,000 most common words, after that, at beginner, but especially at intermediate levels, they'll teach you lots and lots of vocab that you'll never use. Right? So after the basics, the 1,000-ish words that are the most common and you see all the time, and you need them to understand any kind of content. After that, jump straight to the vocabulary you need for the topics you're interested in, right? That's what we're going to do here. The easiest way to start using native speaker content that is actually interesting to continue learning the language is to use YouTube. Because you can get the transcripts of everything. Not everything. In some languages, it doesn't work all that well because YouTube can't find them. But in most main languages, you can get the transcripts of what you are watching or listening to. And that gives you the possibility of getting vocabulary lists of the content you're about to watch or listen to, so that you review the vocab beforehand, not while doing it. This is important because if you have to stop to look up words all the time, it's going to be much less enjoyable and much harder to do, and also you won't be able to do it while listening if you're just listening to it, and you're likely to do less of it because it's harder and less enjoyable. So I always recommend reviewing the vocabulary before you watch or listen to the content. This, by the way, is a language reactor. It's an extension that gives you double subtitles like this. So the video is in French and they talk in French. I'm not going to play it for copyright reasons, just in case. But yeah, you play the video and you get subtitles in the target language and then in English or your language of choice. And you can also put your mouse over the words that you don't know, if you don't know them, either here or in the transcript here. And you can quickly look up the meaning, so that you can quickly check the meaning of the words instead of having to stop. This is really useful to watch videos and to continue learning. Of course, like I said, you should already know the most common words. Otherwise, this is going to be not fun. It's just you'll constantly have to stop and look up words, and that's not fun, right? But once you're at an intermediate level and you want to jump to interesting content, what I recommend you do is choose a channel that has ideally long form content. I don't know how long this is. It's 25 minutes is good. Sometimes I do 1 hour podcasts. I just listen to it in the background. I don't do this in French anymore. I don't need to. But I was going to do it in some other language, but then harder to show, because French is easy to explain for an English speaker. Well, if I was doing this with, I don't know, Greek or something, the fact that you wouldn't understand the the scripts then would make the explanations much harder. But anyway, it works for any language, almost any language. Some languages like Serbian, it doesn't detect the AI doesn't understand the. I guess that's a problem. Anyway, I don't know what the problem is, but I think, yeah, it can't generate subtitles, this kind of subtitles, for some smaller languages. But for the most part, it works. So watch it and understand it. You should be able to read faster, by the way, if you can't read both at the same time fast enough. Just practicing your reading speed. That's also a topic for another video. But then what we're going to do is come here, show transcript, and we were already seeing the transcript here from language reactor, but this is better for our next step. Clicking there and getting the transcript from here, because this we cannot select the whole thing, I think. Can we? I mean, I've tried before and it didn't work, so I recommend you click the transcript button below and you just select the whole thing. Not the whole thing, the transcript, not the description of the video. So copy, and we've got it. And now we're going to turn that into vocabulary and also into easier content that you can read. Instead of reading the whole transcript, if you are watching 1 hour videos, or 1 hour and a half podcasts, listening to them, reading all of that beforehand is very time consuming, and yeah, you're not going to do it. But if you turn it into a short article, that's A2, B1 level, your current level, basically, you'll get a quick and easy to read summary of whatever you're about to watch or listen to. So then it'll be much easier to understand when you're watching or listening, especially if you also did the vocab, right? So the idea is, if your comprehension is already good and you can just watch with double subtitles or even without double subtitles and understand pretty much everything, then you don't need any of this. But then why would you be watching this video if you can already watch and understand without any trouble, right? But if you still don't understand everything easily, then this is what you need to do. So you watch it with double subtitles if you're going to watch it. Otherwise, just listen to it. Listening to it is more time efficient because you can listen to it while doing other things. But if you're going to watch, use double subtitles. Take the transcript, copy it, and that brings us to the next couple of steps. The next step is going to be getting a vocabulary list. And this, you can do it 2 ways. I'm sure there are other ways of doing it as well, but the easiest way, in my experience, is to paste it on ChatGPT and give it the following prompt. Give me the vocabulary list of this French transcript without the English words. This might take a while. The other way would be to use Browserling or a similar website. But you can see how it works. You get, and a lot of these words, you'll already recognize them. So this way of doing it has some pros and cons. One of the cons being that you'll see a lot of words that you already know, but unfortunately, this is no way of letting ChatGPT know which words you know before you get a vocabulary list. So yeah, you get a big vocab list, and then you tell it to put each one in an example sentence. Some of this, like légère, lourd, light, and heavy, we'll put them next to each other so that you see the two adjectives to describe the complete opposite. But yeah, or like the feminine, masculine version next to each other in some other or slightly different variations. But in general, it's a good vocab list. I don't know how many words there are here, but it's quite a lot. And now you can do okay, removed words. Yeah. You can put them in example sentences so then they are easy to review before that. And you can also put them in lists of word families if the word is interesting enough. You probably don't need to do this with every single word, but it's useful to do with a lot of words. And in fact, the more words you do this with, the better, because learning a lot of words is always helpful, both for speaking and for comprehension. And if you use word families, it's going to be way easier to remember any word, really, because you'll see it in slightly different forms, slightly different contexts. So, for example, okay, first of all, before we jump into that, what should you do with this? I've made a mistake here. What you should do with this, I mean, you could do it like this as well. It's a matter of taste, right? Personally, I don't like doing it this way. I like not having this the word before the sentence, just having the sentences. It's not really a mistake. It's just I don't. That's not the way I like it. It's uh, you can tell it instead of like this, just do it like that. But you get the point, right? Maybe some people like having the word before the sentence, so they know which word they should focus on when they are listening. But basically, this is a list that you should review before. Just review it, and again, we're working on comprehension here, not speaking. So just review the list and look up the words you don't know, because this is going to be much more time efficient than, and also will make the watching the content later or listening to it much more enjoyable instead of having to stop and look up words all the time. So just review it first, and if you find something, okay, what's a spot? I look it up. Okay, it's hope. All right, now I know that. Uh, and let's say you want to learn this word. Okay, it's a good word. Well, let's learn it properly and in all its different forms or related words. So you then bring it here. Spoir, give me a list of all the words related to spoil. And then you'll get a list. How long depends on the word. Just, yeah, hopes, to hope, different conjugations of to hope. and then unexpected, different. Somehow, someone who learns Esperanto is also here. I don't know why. I don't know why anyone would learn that, really. But to each their own. Uh, if you don't know what it is, it's a fake language, made up language that some people learn for some reason. Um, there are enough interesting real languages to waste your time with that, in my opinion, but whatever. You get, anyway, you get all these words. Now create an example sentence with each one. Only the sentences. One list. On one list. So you get the word family for hope, to hope, everything. This is a pretty massive list of vocab. It's, I don't know how many words there are here in total, including all conjugations. But once you start going through it, again, if you already know the most common 1,000-ish words, so you know the que, tu, la. If you don't know those, of course, you need to learn those first. But or situation, comprend, you need to know the basics. But again, if the language has a lot of cognates like this, these are very comprehensible for anyone who speaks Spanish or English. But yeah, that's the way to do it. Now we've got a word turned into 20 or 30 or even more words with example sentences, and this is relatively comprehensible because it's always the same context and related words, so that when you review this by listening to it, so you turn this into audio files with text to speech, or you review it by reading it, you understand it very easily, very very easily, and you'll remember them well because it's same word, slight different variations over and over and over. So lots of repetition. Repetition is really important, and you can get a lot of repetition with the same exact sentences over and over. That also works, but a lot of repetition with slightly different words and sentences is even better because you learn more vocab that way. So yeah, this is how you use word families. Any word that's relatively interesting, you do this and you add this to your vocab list and you review them. And you keep doing this over and over until you, well, indefinitely, until you understand the language easily, right? It doesn't mean that you need to know every single word here. But this alone from Espoir, we got, I don't know, 20 or 30 words, probably more. Um, Not all of them are words, by the way. Some of them are just interesting expressions, um, which is also good to have, right? Um, but you get a big list of words, new words, this way. And they're in context, they are easy to understand and easy to remember if you do it this way. And you should do this with 10, 20, 30 new words every day, a complete word family. You don't have to memorize every single word in this group or in the next group, but by reviewing them, you remember reviewing them regularly, by reading or listening to them, you remember them pretty easily. And this is how you get a massive amount of vocabulary quickly out of interesting content, or any kind of content, really. You could use this to uh, learn any kind of vocabulary, right? Any word that you find anywhere, you can just create a list of related words, and then like this, uh, and then an example sentence for each one with this. But going back to the vocabulary of the content, because of course you shouldn't do this with every single word from the. I mean, you could, right? Let's say you want to listen to an hour podcast about something, and you get you get the vocabulary list, and then uh, you learn the word family of each one of the words. That's a massive amount of review in sentences that you need to do before you watch the content or you listen to the content. So it's not practical, really. You could do it, but I I don't recommend you do it. I recommend doing them as separate things. Right. So you review this uh, the vocab list of the content, and you look up the words that you didn't know, and then you watch the content maybe, and then you uh, learn word families of the words that you didn't know, or maybe you learn the words families of the words you didn't know before the watching the content. But I recommend doing the bare minimum to just understand what they're talking about well enough, and then just watch the content or listen to the content, and you can later get back to the vocab list and learn the word families. One more thing I highly recommend you do to understand interesting content much more easily, much earlier in your language learning journey, so that you can, you know, enjoy interesting content earlier, and you can learn more about the culture of the language, and also stay motivated because you are consuming interesting content. So it's basically all advantages and no disadvantages to doing this. Um, this is what I recommend you do. So you take the transcript, you paste it here. Let's say you review the vocab, or you can do this before reviewing the vocab as well. And let's say you're at a B1 level comprehension. Um, give me a B1 level article in based on this transcript. And you'll get basically graded readers type of article. I have actually never used graded readers, but that's the idea, right? It's short stories for different levels. You can create your own by telling the AI what's your level. Okay, I want to read about this topic, like summarize all this transcript into a short article at an A2 level or B1 or B2 level. C1 you don't need to, right? And even B2 you probably don't need to. So you get, I don't know how good your French is. This is way too. I read books all the time in French. This is easy, but I do this for Greek, for example, where my level is low. Um, so yeah, you get a short article that's it's a summary of whatever has been going on, whatever they're talking about in the video. So now you already know what they're going to talk about in the video before watching it or listening to it, and you'll see the words here as well that you need. You'll see them in context, and this will make the long form video much more, or podcast episode, much more comprehensible. Just reading this beforehand. And if you read this and then you also review the long vocabulary list, like I showed earlier, you'll understand what you're listening to pretty easily, unless you're at a really low level in the language still. But this will help a lot. A lot of it is just knowing the words and knowing the context beforehand, and this is how you can make it comprehensible. Now, if you do this with one video, like you read the summary, let's say you're at an A2 level, you read the summary of the video, like a short article, you understand what they're going to talk about, you review the vocab beforehand, and then you listen to it or you watch it with Language Reactor. You'll understand pretty well with one. But if you do this with 2 or 3 videos every day, in a month you'll understand everything relatively easily. Maybe not perfectly with no help, but if you're watching it, you'll understand pretty much everything. And it's as simple as that. It is time consuming still. I wish we could do it faster, but still 100 times faster than what people mostly do, which is just watch random stuff a lot, or uh, you know, it's watch Netflix, or use Duolingo, that kind of stuff. It's years of time wasted and no real results, because you can watch Netflix in the target language, but if you haven't done any of this beforehand, uh, yeah, you understand because it's a film and they are doing whatever they're doing in the film, so you get the context, but that doesn't mean you're learning out of it that much. And the moment you encounter the same words in a different context in real life, you will not understand them. So this, yes, it's work, but if you want to understand the language well, just do this. And it does work for books as well. If you're interested in a specific subject and when you want to, or just any book, right? You want to read that book, maybe you can read an article summarizing the book first. Maybe if you're reading novels, it's not fun to read a summary beforehand, but if you're reading nonfiction, yeah. And if you're reading novels, then you don't have a vocabulary problem. If you already feel like trying novels and fiction, you already must have a pretty high level. Otherwise, you wouldn't even think of doing that, right? But that's basically it. This is how you use interesting content to learn vocabulary fast and to improve comprehension. Follow all these steps, and you'll get your comprehension level to a pretty good level pretty fast, and you'll be able to then continue improving by enjoying content in the language.